Since assuming office, President Bola Tinubu has adopted tough decisions in order to revive the ailing economy. Some of the decisions include the implementation of the Stephen Orosai panel's report on the reform of the civil service and the removal of the controversial fuel subsidy, job cuts, introduction of more taxes, among others. The president also announced the discontinuation of funding of professional bodies and councils with effect from 2026. The Director General of the Budget Office, Ben Akabueze, who disclosed this in a circular, says the decision was in line with the decision of the Presidential Committee on Salaries, and it was necessary for the government to cut the cost of governance. Senior Advocate of Nigeria joins us now to speak on the Orosai recommendations on the defunding of some institutions by the federal government and the consequences of such a policy, among other issues. Good afternoon, Michael Aondoaaka, former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice. Good to have you with us on Newsday.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Well, Hawaii is fine. Well, this is Temi Tokwe speaking at the moment. Now, let's start with this decision.
Okay, Tokwe, sorry about that.
No problem.
How are you,
no problem.
Tokwe?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm doing well as well, thank you.
Now, what do you make of the federal government's plan to stop funding professional bodies and councils? We do know that they are meant for research and technology developments in their field. What impact, will this have on their ability to deliver?
Well, first of all, we have to differentiate between professional bodies like MBL, Medical Council, and the rest of them. Their membership and their funding is largely from members of the association. But other professional bodies that are research-based, it's a difficult thing to understand the stoppage of the funding. It may be that it is expected the members of the associations, the professional bodies, should fund themselves just like Nigerian Bar Association, Nigerian Medical Association, Nigerian Nursing Association. I think that is the direction which the committee felt it was very necessary to not to fund them, but for members to fund themselves. I think it has been in the right direction. But generally, on the Stephen Orosai's report, one aspect which started during our tenure, we felt that many parastatals and agencies were a duplication of work. You have an agency doing one thing and another one overlapping. It was very necessary for them to be merged. But the obstacles are high then, when I was Attorney General, was to give my candid advice to the Federal Executive Council was that most of them were established by an act of parliament. So I also heard that there was moves by the present government to merge some of the parastatals and ministry. I only heard it could be forced. It will be in the right direction, but the procedure cannot be by an executive action. It has to be by legislation because they were established by Act of Parliament. Therefore, maybe when the Attorney General sits, it will look at the report, take it to the Federal Executive Council, a white paper will come out, and based on the white paper, they will send an executive bill for repeal of some of them or for major or some of them. But it has to be by an act of parliament. But for the funding, if those associations are mainly being funded and it's professional bodies, the president has a right to stop the funding. Funding of a professional body is not a privilege. It's just it's not a right, it's a privilege given by the federal government. They feel that not funding it there's nothing you can do about it. Though there's going to be social consequences, naturally, but I think they have balanced the social consequences to the cost of government, where the cost of government and the productivity of those associations. If you have been funding research and you're not seeing any research coming, but you have been funding and the overhead is high, it's another different ball game. You cannot continue to fund an association that the production level is not commensurate with the funding. That is a purely an executive action, which I think the federal government felt it was desirable to scrap them away. Thank you.
And I think some of the fear of some of Nigerians concerning this defunding of some of these parastatals is how can that be used to the money that's recouped during the defunding? What are the assurances that it will be appropriated in a more appropriate way? Will it really be reducing waste, or will it just be passing the waste on to another form that we may not necessarily see or understand?
Well, thank you very much. The funding in this way was budgeted for. And if they are not in the budget, the monies from that will go to other critical areas like improvement of health services, improvement of our road network infrastructure. There are many things that it can go to, or trying to get moving to digital agriculture. A lot of things can come in because funding was not that the federal government was taking that money directly and giving those bodies. It was appropriated for. So the National Assembly will have excess funds that they can channel to critical areas like security, defense, and others. Security, agriculture, health services, road infrastructure. Certainly, the money will go to a very proper use. I don't see any challenge on that. It's not that they have the money. The funding came from appropriation. Appropriation is an act of parliament. And the moment they are no longer part of the appropriation, it's obvious that the money will go back to the pool. And that level of funding that has been eased out from the professional bodies will be rechanneled by the National Assembly through an appropriate appropriation. That is my own understanding of it.
And while we are looking for more funding, to boost our resources, to boost our healthcare system and so many other sectors in the country, shouldn't we also be talking about probably reducing the salaries and allowances of political office holders? I mean, recently we got news that some ex-service chiefs will be going with 4 SUVs, they will be going with aides, they will be going abroad for medical treatment and so on. Shouldn't we also be looking at reducing those costs so that we can have enough money for other projects?
I think the cost of government in Nigeria is high. It's a very frank story. The cost of government in the country is high. Especially now that the cost of fuel is high, we can also think on ourselves to employ self-discipline. But you see, sometimes government functionaries, like the president, the governors, sometimes they go, all the other people following them are not part of government expenses. People just follow. The president is going, and if I'm privileged, I follow the president behind. You could see a long call, but you discover that not up to 5 cars or 10 cars are funded by government. So that has been the problem. For instance, when a governor is going somewhere, you will discover that the governor has only 4 cars. His security car, backup car, but you see people, every commissioner, everybody in government will want to be part of convoy. So we'll have to differentiate what is actually happening, whether those people who followed those officials are actually funded by government. If they are funded by government, there's need to rethink, because the cost of government has to go down. I think part of this issue of major parastatals and non-funding of this other professional body is to reduce cost of government. And it's also desirable to look at ourselves, especially the heuristic view of all the funding. Because if we reduce funding, we'll be able to beef up the salaries of public servants because of the issue of you know generally now a person who is earning 30,000, which is the minimum wage, and he has a motorbike, you can imagine in a day he will be spending just more than 3,000 to fuel his car. So we must have a very balanced view to ensure that political officers have the appropriate salaries in such a way that the excess that comes out of it, we can start thinking of how we can adjust the salaries of the public servants, especially the civil servants and other public bodies.
All right. I want to pivot the conversation just a little bit to the recent appointments, and this one particularly the Secretary General to the Federation, George Akume. Well, there has been a lot of discussion about the unequal representation within the country. Now with the North Central, with this appointment, is this enough to maybe pacify some of those discussions?
Well, the appointment of Senator George Akume is one of the appointments that the people in the North Central feel is a right direction of Mr. President. Because politically, North Central, a politician look at the number of votes you have. Next to the Northwest, North Central contributed substantially to the Mr. President general performance at the polls for APC. And secondly, if you look at the history of George Akume, Senator George Akume, he has been a committed party person to the core. He has been with the president. He has seen it all. They were governors together. They know each other on times of performance. After that, he joined forces with him to bring the ACN to the party, which the leader of the party was Mr. President, ACN. He was the first to bring it across the River Niger to the north. And he made remarkable inroads within the North Central in gaining parliamentary seats, even though he was not able to achieve a governorship shift at that time, but he was able. And when it merged to what we have now, APC, he got a governorship for Benue and other few states within the North Central. So it is an appointment that we feel it is in the right direction. And we expect that more, considering the fact that we have been kind of aged out. And this appointment, we believe Mr. President is looking in the direction of bringing an inclusive government. I saw his appointment from the service chiefs, and that shows wisdom. Everything was well praised. And then looking at the North Central, where I come from, where for quite a long time we have never had a major appointment, and singling out George Akume, who has been a core party man, a kind human being, somebody who he doesn't have enemies. He's one person that tomorrow you quarrel with him, the next day you see he's embracing you. He's really the right person in the North Central that the president has achieved. I would believe that has brought us have a thinking that this government also will have more to do for us in terms of agriculture, in terms of security. Because North Central basically are agricultural-based people. And we expect a government that can protect our people, that will go back to farming. And bringing our son right close in, we believe that that can be achieved. And we are very grateful to Mr. President. The multiplier effect of this appointment is we have a long-lasting impact on the people of North Central, and we remain ever grateful. Me personally, I took an advert yesterday in the nation to thank Mr. President for the appointment. And I believe for myself and the people of North Central, and indeed the Nigerian people, the appointment was one of the best appointments Mr. President has done.
Well, still talking about appointments, some people are of the view that it was wrong for the president to have sworn in new service chiefs without Senate screening. What's your opinion on this?
Well, let me be candid with you. There are different views on it. When I was Attorney General, I felt personally that the president, we did what is called, I think section 315, the existing law. Because the issue of confirmation of the appointment is the Armed Forces Act, which predated the Constitution. But the Constitution itself did not talk of the president making an appointment and sending to the Senate for confirmation of service chiefs. So we did an amendment which the president has the power to amend a legislation, an existing legislation to conform with the Constitution. Because since the issue of confirmation was not in the Constitution, we felt that what is in the Constitution cannot be added or expanded by an act of parliament, National Assembly. So President Yar'Adua actually signed an executive act amending that Armed Forces Act to conform with the Constitution. That was the position I took. And that is the position I still take now. But during that time, we had a couple of people. We have my good friend Kiamo, the SN, who took us to court that time. And he took us on the court that we ought to have gone to the National Assembly. We challenged the action that no, we have amended the act by an act which is an existing law to conform with the Constitution, and there's no requirement. Somehow around the line, during my tenure, he didn't pursue the matter much. Nothing was done, and the appointment, the two service chiefs, set of service chiefs, the president Yar'Adua appointed, we did not go to National Assembly. But after that, my successor, whom I have a lot of respect, Mohammed Bello, settled the matter out of court with Kiamo, and they sent the list to the National Assembly, precisely the Senate, for confirmation. So there are two opinions. My opinion has been that it is an existing law. The Armed Forces Act is an existing law. And since the Constitution did not say the Senate should confirm the appointment of armed forces, my own personal opinion is that an existing law cannot be read to be in conflict with the Constitution. And I brought the case of Attorney General Abia State versus Attorney General of the Federation around 2002. And that case said what is stated in the Constitution cannot be expanded, cannot be subtracted. And I believe that since the Constitution itself did not say submit to the Senate, because if you look at the Constitution as a whole, appointment of minister is expressly stated submit to the Senate. Appointment of Supreme Court justice is expressly stated submit to the Senate. And appointment of key officials, including even the Chief Justice, Chief Judges of the Federal High Court, for the Senate. But when it came to the issue of appointment of the service chief, the Constitution was silent. So since the Constitution was silent, reading the Constitution as a whole, I felt that it was not necessary. And the Armed Forces Law was not in conformity. Because the Armed Forces Law is deemed to be an act of parliament. And an act of parliament, upon coming into force of the Constitution, should not be in conflict with the Constitution. That is why, at that time, I asked the president to sign it to conform with the Constitution, because the president has the power to amend an existing law to conform with the provisions of the Constitution. And we did that. I stand by my position. So going by my position, the current president is right. But if you go on the position of my successor, it means the president ought to have sent to the Senate. But I maintain my position that the Armed Forces Law cannot enlarge the provisions of the Constitution. And since I did not see expressly, if we see the issue of IG, the Constitution even said it has to go to Council of State. So if the Constitution intended that the armed forces should be taken to the Senate, it would have said so. Having said so, in many other instances, I did not see why the Constitution would be silent, but Armed Forces Act will be sent to the Senate. So that's why we modified the Armed Forces Act at that time during President Yar'Adua to conform with the Constitution, and the issue of going to Senate was deleted. That has been my position. And I still stand on that position.
All right, then. Things are subject to interpretation there. Just before we leave, the piece of current news that we got today about value-added tax. The pinch on Nigerians is being felt nationwide. This is just another one. The value-added tax is going to be given to market traders and the informal sector in order for the country to increase its revenue base. What is your opinion on this development?
Well, I wanted to look for further details because social media and what does not come officially have become difficult for me to comment on it. But we should also, as part of a responsible government, the government has started where, and Nigerians have tolerated some of the actions they see clearly were in conformity with the aspiration of the people. For instance, the issue of removal of subsidy. Nigerians reacted in favor of government on the fact that Nigerians have notorious knowledge that subsidy was benefiting few people. And therefore, in spite of the tremendous hardship Nigeria faced by removing those subsidy, government will, as necessity, the money freed from the subsidy will be used for development of the country. But if we have to be, reforms must be taken in such a gradual way, in such a way that the heat on the public should not be overbearing. If we have removed the subsidy, we would expect, I personally would expect that the government should slow a little while so that the palliatives that are necessary to absorb the shock of subsidy should be in place when the money that is freed from the subsidy starts flowing. If that is not done, and again another one is done to hit the market women, we may be heading for an unpleasant consequences from the public because they may overreact. The heat will be too much. A lot of people will become confused. They have accepted the government decision on subsidy, and it is very desirable. They will be expecting to see the outcome of what has come out of the subsidy. If it comes to development of the infrastructure, everybody will accept, and everybody will be happy. And I believe that we have started seeing the reviving of the market. The stock exchange has responded favorably because everybody sees that the removal was in to help Nigerians. But if, as soon as that is not yet seen clearly, what I could advise the government to do is that try to put in place palliatives that can absorb the shock on the fuel subsidy. For instance, vehicles, transportation. Some people cannot afford, so we have to improve our public transportation system so that civil servants can use public transportation to come to court, come to work. That is still being, cost of transportation has moved up, but people are hopeful that it will calm down when the reality of the benefits of fuel subsidy is coming. For instance, one of the realities of fuel subsidy will be that when our road infrastructure, basically Nigeria travel by road, if our road have no potholes, you know that you spend more money on fuel, but you spend less on maintenance of your vehicle. Therefore, you have a win-win situation. But if that is not done, if there's still potholes on the road, and suddenly that has not yet been, there's nothing to show Nigerians that this is what the direction we are going, and suddenly you have hit the market women, that will escalate prices of foodstuff, and there's going to be on. I don't think it will be hasty. We should tally like 6 months to see and demonstrate that, yes, what we're talking about, fuel subsidy removal, this is the reality. But I personally, I have total support for this government, but if that is coming immediately after fuel subsidy, I will have some reservation.
Well, former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Michael Aondoakaa, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.